Channel F, the one with all the fun. The Fairchild Video Entertainment System at your larger JCPenney. The home entertainment system that never gets old. Plug in a new video cart and change the fun. Play tic-tac-toe, shooting gallery, or just doodle. Switch video carts and play Desert Fox. Switch again, it's blackjack. Or play the 2 built-in games, Pro Hockey or Tennis Champ. Channel F for fun. The Fairchild Video Entertainment System. Just $169.95. Video cart cartridges, $19.95 each. At your larger JCPenney.
ChukTomahawk, buenos dias, mi amigo.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good, dude, good. Couple of technical difficulties last episode, and I think this time we've got them worked out. I don't think the audience is gonna well, they will realize because I did a little fix, and I think we mentioned it, but edited over it, no problem. And I think we fixed those technical difficulties just now, so we should be good. But anyways, man, ¿cómo estás?
Oh, man, I'm hanging in here. Yeah, survived a colonoscopy this week, so...
And with that, welcome gamers, non-gamers, PvEers, PvPers, and even NPCs. We don't discriminate. This is New Wave Gaming Podcast. Episode... Fuck, what episode is it, man?
69.
I don't think it is, actually. You don't remember either. Great. Listeners, we don't remember the number of our own podcast because this is the best gaming podcast that ever existed. I think it's 46, man.
I was going to guess 47.
I think it's 46. Oh, really? Damn. Gosh darn. This is a whole new... Yeah, it's 46. Episode 46.
Checks out.
Yeah? Okay, good. I'm glad it checks out. It would also checked out, at least for a few years... More than a few years, almost a decade. Was it a decade? Let's call it a decade. We'll get specific here in a minute. And we kind of touched on this in the last episode. We teased out a little bit. That we'd be going back to our roots and covering some gaming history here, particularly a very important console that came out in the 70s.
Yeah.
And this is the Fairchild Channel F. Chuck, real quick, let's just get right to it because it's going to be one of the first questions, I think. What does the F in Channel F stand for, my friend?
Fuck.
No. Wait, was that fuck as in it stands for fuck, or fuck as in you don't remember? Come on, man. Where's your
totally
energy this episode, brother?
Sounds for fun.
Okay.
Fun. Channel fun.
Channel fun. And I think we'll see here that one of the reasons they did that is because that Atari was... I think it came out just after, and they needed to rebrand because they called it the Fairchild VES, Video Entertainment System, I think was one of the first iterations, and it was right about that time that Atari came out with it. It's VCS, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, fuck. Pinche Atari, tenemos que cambiar de nombre. We have to change names. And they came out with the Channel F, Channel Fun.
True.
Anyways, so this, fellow gamers, is a retrospective episode. We're going to kind of just, do our best to explain this console, why it's important, what it brought to the table, how it revolutionized gaming, changed gaming, inspired other gaming companies in their development, and much more. The Fairchild Channel F was released, when was it released? 1976?
76, yep.
It was released in 1976. Gosh, there's so much to hear. I don't want to skip anything. I'm already getting excited because it's actually, we're going to find out, it's not necessarily the console that itself that really carved its section in history here, It's actually a couple of other elements. But before that, I wanted to bring this up here. Oh, shoot. I lost it. Chuck, talk to the fellow gamers out there while I'm bringing up some cheat sheets, some cheat codes here.
Yeah, it seems like it kind of went through a few different iterations, like where it all got started. Like it didn't necessarily start like at Fairchild. It sounds like there were some folks over, I think at a company called Alpex that were like trying to get some things going. And it's interesting when I hear these names, like, because it seems like a lot of these electronic companies were kind of born out of like things that we didn't necessarily think of as high-tech computing, but it was the computing of the 70s. It's like cash registers and like bowling alley, like scorekeeping and you know, just little light show type, you know, computing that, you know, really was kind of high-tech for its time. But, you know, we'd see it today and be like, you know, this is no more than a handheld calculator can do, like, you know, kind of thing.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Like, it's like a handheld it's like a big handheld calculator without the calculator. To a degree. But okay. Let's just let me just read the breakdown, the general breakdown of what this is, and then we can get into some history. We can set the stage and then move forward in time, kind of like we used to back when we did that in television episode. Mm-hmm. So, gamers, welcome to our history of the Fairchild Channel F video game console, a retrospective into gaming past. The Fairchild Channel F, short for Channel Fun, is a video game console, the first to be based on a microprocessor and to use ROM cartridges. It was the first video game console to use cartridges. And any of you out there that have used cartridges, you know, you'll feel this, right? You get it. I don't even know if there are any more cartridge-based platforms out there these days. We can get into that in a minute, but, you know, because that'll take some thought. I'm sure there are, maybe. But so it was the first video game console to use ROM cartridges instead of having games built in. So yeah, I'm going to stop there real quick because we've touched on this before, but video games used to be built into the console themselves. Mm-hmm. Like the Magnavox Odyssey, which was the very first video game console. If I'm not mistaken, that console... Go ahead, Chuck. Sorry.
And you had, like, you know, just like you said, they were built into them, and some of them, it was the only trick that the Pony did. Like you know, the Pong machine, like, played Pong, and that's it. And it was every bit as big as this and probably every bit as expensive. So yeah. You know, I like that they included that in the system, the hockey and the tennis. So you know, if you were standing there at the store and you're looking at a Pong system or the Fairchild Channel F, like, it's like it had the promise of doing more later, because we all know, like, you're gonna get tired of Pong eventually, especially.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, like, if these things are brand new and just now coming upon the world. Video games, we get bored of games. It just, you know. Even Helldivers, at least I was like, this is really, really fun. And then, and then Grand Theft Auto Online was $9.99 on the PlayStation Store. And now what are we all doing? Now we're all doing the freaking trying to break this fool out of prison in this heist that we just can't seem to freaking beat because it's fucking hard, man. Y'all know what we're talking about, the prison heist.
For sure.
Fucking A,
but I will say Pong does hold up under competition. Like you would be amazed, like, even today, if you get your buddies over, like or put, $5 on it, like, all of a sudden, like, it's
Pong
a competition.
Can become very exhilarating.
Well, it still holds up, I mean, it is amazing to see that little ball go across the screen. And I'm sure, like, I like, if you look back, like, when they made this thing, they marketed it to television companies. Let's see, I've got it, like, kind of, I'd written some note here in the.
Oh, dude, take your time, man.
They
see, we prepared for y'all with this episode.
Yeah, they sent folks out to, like, television production type folks, and I think that's one of the reasons they called it the Channel F as well. Besides, the Channel Fun, it's almost like they're thinking of this as another channel on your TV, and these different cartridges are different programming, sort of, under that context, and it was, I think, like, I look back at this thing and think, like, man, it's clunky as hell and it doesn't do much, and I don't necessarily see it as high tech. But at that time, dude, this would have been like having the brand new, like,
oh, dude,
PlayStation 5-ish, like like the nicest, newest thing out there, and it I know, like, money doesn't buy love, but like, if your parents, like, are getting you this, like, system, I mean, I think it retailed $169, and like if you do that conversion to today's money, you're looking at $800. Like,
I've seen 900. I've seen as high as $900 in today's money for that damn thing.
And $20 for the games, which I think would come out to about $100 in today's. Like I think about that. That is part of my perspective. Like when we look at new games, when like today, like you can pay $40 and get all the content of Helldivers or something. Like I remember what it was like to pay, the equivalent of $100. Like that one birthday, Christmas gift, kind of situation, and come home and like you've got. Math quiz.
Or Hangman.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And you're expected like to have $100 good time by your parents. Like, it's like, how's that new game going?
Yeah. They want to
awesome.
see. They want you to lose sight in your left eye for a couple of days from being too close to the television, and you know what I mean. They want to see that. Otherwise, like, well, what did I spend the $100 for if you're not going to at least lose sight in your left eye for 3 days?
Yeah. You're coming there talking about being bored,
sitting too close. Kids don't even know about that these days. The younger, don't sit too. Hey, get away from the television. You're too close. It's going to radiate your eyes.
Well, yeah.
That's not even a thing anymore.
It was definitely a thing back in these days. Like I think with like the first prototype they made, they had to redo it.
Don't spill the beans.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. We still got to set the scene.
Yeah. But
right,
you're right. And so you were expected to have $100 worth of fun, out of this thing. And like the prices were up there. For sure, and the reason I brought that up was just to say, like, this is high tech, man. Like this is something, like, I know for my dad, it was like a point of pride with his friends. It's like, that boy can run a computer. Look at him. Like, like when you see a baby swiping an iPad today, like how parents are just like, shit, they just come out of the womb. I don't know.
They came out of the womb with that thing. Like, he already knows how to run the,
Yeah.
Look at him. He's already setting reminders.
That was all. You were either, when in my day, it was like you were working a computer or running it. Like,
before I forget, because you said something, you said that it looked kind of clunky. And I got to admit, dude, that gigantic big ass PlayStation 5 right there is a lot more clunkier than that Fairchild Channel Fun.
Yeah.
Boy.
True.
I gotta say, that's just a little at least I think I've never actually held a Channel F in my hands, but just kind of watching commercials and videos, which fellow gamers jump on YouTube and go type in Fairchild Channel F commercial and talk about a blast from the past.
Well,
at your larger JCPenney outlets. Do JCPenney's even exist anymore? I don't think so.
Larger JCPenney's. As soon as I heard that, I knew that wasn't my JCPenney. Like when I thought of it, I was like, no, that's not the old Morristown.
But okay, so let's not get too excited here. Let me finish. I didn't even finish the main description here, and I'm getting this off the interwebs. By the way, this general description of the Fairchild Channel F. So it was released by Fairchild Camera and Instrument in November 1976 across North America at a retail price of $169.95. So basically $170, equivalent to $910 in 2023. It was launched as the Video Entertainment System, quote unquote. But when Atari released its video computer system the next year, Fairchild rebranded the machine as Channel F while keeping the entertainment system descriptor. The Fairchild Channel F achieved only about 350,000 units before Fairchild sold the technology to Zircon International in 1979. Trailing well behind the VCS, the system was discontinued in 1983. So, yep. It.
I'm gonna go
now. Let me just throw these out there real quick, because there's gonna be the techies in the nerd techs that will understand these things, and I'm just gonna shoot through them real quick because I basically don't understand much. Like beyond, if someone tells me it gets this many frames per second, I get that. If they tell me there's a refresh rate of whatever on the screen, I get that. But when they get deeper into like the CPUs and the RAMs and the hertz and it buzzes at this and it clanks at that and it clicks at this, I kind of get lost. So I'm just gonna show here. It uses a Fairchild F8 processor, a microprocessor, because I think they were originally using the Intel microprocessors.
8080,
yeah, but then they switched over to the Fairchild 8080 processor, and they eventually updated within the Fairchild microprocessing development. Like the 8080, I don't believe was the last iteration of that microprocessor. They kept using those.
I want to say the Intel was the 8080, and then the Fairchild made what's called the F8.
I have to disagree. Good sir. Let me get to that part, and we'll just knock it out real quick. Let me see here. Design. Let's see. Shoot. Okay, here's the technical specifications of what it was, not its history and predecessors. But its CPU microprocessor is a Fairchild F8, which is an 8-bit. And they sold the F8. You could actually buy the F8 microprocessor as like a development kit, like that you could just work on at home, I think. And they ended up using it, right, in the actual console. It operates at 1.789 megahertz NTSC color burst. It says PAL Gen 1, 2 megahertz, like a whole bunch of technical mumbo jumbo. I'm not gonna lie, I don't understand any of that shit. Do you, Chuck?
I'd kind of gotten those off the Wikipedia page there, and I think like we're used to hearing numbers like 10x of this, or whatever. Like this would be like, like what my refrigerator currently can do.
But things that I do understand, I don't want to just be babbling with no direction here. What I do understand is, they used a bitmap, and I think it was a 128 by 64 pixel bitmap, and they were also able to introduce, I believe, 8 colors, a palette of 8 colors, and they were able to use these bitmaps to do things that the prior consoles like the Magnavox Odyssey were not able to do. So like on the Magnavox Odyssey, I think it was more, visualize this, gamers. The very, very first video game console you'd get, of course, you'd buy it, and you'd probably buy it at like a dealership, not at an actual store. You'd go to like the Magnavox dealership and you'd buy or they'd come and people, door-to-door marketers would come and be like, well, we have the new Magnavox television. It'd come in like they'd show you their products, and then there'd also be this Odyssey television console or television game. It wasn't called a video game. And you'd buy it, and it'd be fucking expensive as fuck probably, and you'd get home and you'd open it up, and what you would see is you'd have this box, and it would connect to your television. And by the way, at this time, any sounds that came out of these devices came from the actual console, not from the television. And I'm not sure the Magnavox even had audio. It may have. But check this out. Visualize this. You're sitting, this is back in the day, right? So you have a big box TV. There were no flat screens or anything like that, or these plasma LED, none of that stuff. Frames and 4K, 8K, no. You had this big ass, heavy ass TV that cost hundreds of dollars. Like most families couldn't even afford them, and you'd buy it, and then you'd get your Magnavox Odyssey, and inside it there'd be like this sticky like film that had a picture on it, and it'd be the picture of like a tennis court. And you'd take that film and you'd press it up against the screen, and the static being produced from the screen would turn that film with a tennis court painted on it into like a sticker, and it would just stick to the screen. And then you'd connect the thing, and it would produce these like, I don't know how to describe it. I'm losing the words right now to describe this, but basically the Odyssey would manipulate the screen in a way to show that there would be a little ball moving, a blip,
sprite.
a little square, a sprite would be moving, and basically the overlay that you would stick to the screen would serve as the actual like the arena or the tennis court, or as you will. So it's very, I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. It's very rudimentary, you know? Like, I mean, you had to you had to put like a transparent sticker on this, a lot of imagination needed. Not very immersive.
And it's like nothing's going to happen to that sticker, I'm sure.
Nope. And you know, they had, I think they had like, yeah, they had very simple games like, you know, Pong and I think like, you know, like a Hangman and like very simple games like that. Just very simple stuff. So anyways.
But it did have cartridges. Like as far as the
no,
consumer
it did not. It had chips.
As far as the consumer would have known, it would have felt like a cartridge. I mean, granted, that stuff was programmed into the Odyssey already, and you were simply like sort of completing a circuit with the cartridge and telling it what to play that was already inside of it. But the experience would have been very similar. Like, you know, it's like to play this game, I put this thing in there.
Yeah, I guess, to the unknowing mind, like you buy one box, you buy the other. I guess the real big difference is that one was a chip, not a cartridge, right? With the Magnavox Odyssey, you basically got these big chips. Kind of reminded me of like Star Trek when Data's putting the isolinear chips into the warp core thing.
So fast.
Yeah, he's like, yeah. Everyone's all wasted on the ship. That one guy can't put the chips in, and they're just playing with them. And Data comes down, and somehow he's wasted too, even though he's a robot. And he's like, "Put the chips back," and he's like, way off topic. Sorry, everyone.
Super speed, right? And it's not a programmable like thing. It's essentially like, you know, like a little extension of hardware.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was like so yeah, like they were able to introduce a bitmap on this with this console. So now you weren't putting overlays on your screen. Like each cartridge had its own game and its own memory on it.
I'm just picturing that overlay, like, you know, like where your little brother spilled Kool-Aid on it, you know, and like it's kind of up on the screen and the corners like peeling off.
Back in the day.
Yeah, just, and I also think like I could just see me like when I went toward the TV, like the TV that Dad had paid hundreds of dollars worth at that, he would just shut that down. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you doing, son? Like you're gonna scratch that, like.
The refresh rate on the Channel F was 60 hertz. You know, today, like, I think you want to have a minimum of 144 hertz refresh rate so that you can run high FPS, right? This had 60 hertz. Had the 8 colors, the bitmap. Audio, it only had 3 tones of beeps. It had the 120 hertz, 500 hertz, and 1 kilohertz that could be modulated to produce different tones. You know, so we're talking the...
And it came out of the console, too. Like,
yeah. Yes. It came out of the actual console box. It wasn't until the later generation of the Channel F, when they kind of like redesigned it, that they changed it so that the audio would come out of the television. Input: 2 custom game controllers hardwired to the console on the original release and removable on the Channel F system too. What's up with these controllers, Chuck? I mean, there's no way we can just say, oh yeah, two custom game controllers and then move forward. No, dude, these things looked like the heads of aliens attached to a bomb detonator.
Yeah.
But they were super
the
cool.
Dynamite plunger is like, I feel like the best the best description I've ever heard of it. And dude, like, what could you not do with this thing? Like, I wonder what, like, how you could look at that, the games they had come up with, and be like, we need this.
Well, you know, I think it was the wild, wild west. Gaming was very new in the 70s, in the late 70s. And it was like they were trying, I think in every realm, like in every, let me choose my right words here. I got a lot of balls in the air. It seems like back then they were just trying to figure out what to do in every instance. What do I mean by that? Like, okay, we need to design a controller. The sky's the limit, you know, that you could just, what are you gonna, you can design anything you want. No one had kind of figured out what the right controller looked like. Everyone was coming out with weird controllers. We talked about this on the Intellivision episode. The Intellivision controller was insane. It was like a keypad or something. And then the the Atari controllers are their own thing. The Magnavox controller was like this weird, like it looked like a little radio tuner kind of a thing. And then also, like, we're talking about the first iterations of cartridges. They were just experimenting, trying this new stuff. It wasn't like anything was set in stone yet, really, about what the best way to do things were. And I think the controller is an example of that, of these guys just getting creative.
Well, they sure did, because good grief, dude. I mean, that knob on the top, dude, you can do so many things with that. Like, you can push it down, you can pull it, you can turn it to the left, you can turn
8 directions.
Dude, you could turn gay with that thing, man. I mean... I mean, not even mean to. Like,
reset.
Like, golly, I gotta buy some new clothes. Like,
oh man, dude. It'll turn you upside down, right side out, inside in. Yeah, but it's.
Well, I mean, when you say that about the Intellivision controller, like that's still like 3 years out. Or whatever. I agree. It was complex and probably had more buttons than it even needed. But, like, dude, I mean,
I think the fucking Fairchild controller is way cooler than the Intellivision one.
It is good.
Dude, think about it. It's like the first. I think it might be the very first, like, joystick type of thing on a controller.
No, dude. I
with a click and a pull. I mean, that's effectively a.
Oh yeah,
that's half a PlayStation DualSense.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, the joystick I associate with what Atari made, and I've got some more stuff to say about that. Like when we talk about the inspiration that the Atari took from this. But did you see? Like, did your OCD not notice that built into the Fairchild console is a little home for these controllers with a little cover?
I did not see that, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Look, like we've gotten so ahead into fellow gamers. We actually printed an outline, like a fucking bullet point, like piece by piece, proper structure to this episode, and we've basically torched that and thrown it to the wind. So we're all out at this point. So at some point, Chuck, I think we should go back and describe a little bit of the past, like how the Fairchild F, what its history looks like. Because you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think we could put some more depth into that. Hold on, let me take a rip from this jizzoint real quick.
Like where it came from? Like its origins?
Yeah, just the background, like the origin story of the Channel F. I think it's interesting. It's legal.
Legal.
Okay, let me check this out real quick. Did we leave anything? Did we just start a whole topic and not finish it? I don't want to leave anything on. We were talking about the controllers, right?
Yeah.
The controllers I think they're badass, and they're definitely unique. Okay. So let's go back now. We're going back to like 1960, pretty much. I don't know if any of you younger gamers have heard of this company or if they're still around, but or if anyone even bowls anymore. But bowling, when I was younger, was like something the family would go and do from time to time.
For sure.
Along with going to the roller skater rink. I don't know if those exist anymore, where you'd have the roller skates with the 4 wheels and everyone go in a big circle. And like, if you were a real boss, you'd have like a girl holding your hand, and they'd put on your favorite song, and you guys would be skating around the rink. Yeah.
For sure.
Man.
And all these everyone I ever went to also had a ton of like stand-up arcade games as well.
You better believe it, man. Yeah. Fuck, dude, those were the times, Chuck. Those were the times, man. Anyways, one of these places would be bowling alleys, and in the bowling alleys, it was almost certainly AMF equipment. You'd see AMF everywhere, right? I remember that very well. Part of AMF, part of the research and development team was a gentleman named Norman Alpert, and these guys were located up in Connecticut. And it was around, I think, 1968, more or less, when AMF, the bowling company, and AMF, they're not like a bowling company per se. I think what they do is like automation, right? They'd make those counters for automation, like the bowl, like when you'd get a score and it automate and shit like that. It'd count your score and all that. Sure. So that's what they worked on. And then AMF's like, hey, we're gonna go move to North Carolina, I believe it was North Carolina, not South Carolina. We're moving to North Carolina, and Alpert's like, you know what? I don't want to go to North Carolina. I want to stay here. And him and a few developers from the R&D team stayed back, and they go on to create Alpex. Alpert, huh? Yeah, there's obviously a correlation there. And then so Alpex, I think they're trying to get into like the automation and computerized, industry more. And I think they go on to create a relationship with Pitney Bowes, I think is the name of this company. Mm-hmm. And they want to make computerized cash registers. So this is around that, this is during the late 60s, early 70s period, and they're trying to get into that. But they're kind of late to the game. IBM and other companies have already killed it, in that market. They're not really making any way. They missed out on the calculator scene. They missed out on that. I think they want to go and introduce like digital watches because that's becoming a new thing. Mm-hmm. Remember the old digital Casios? They're coming back now. Yeah, so they did that. And then they're in a bunch of financial debt in 1973. They're just kind of like, fuck, what do we do? And one of the co-founders of Alpex, I think his name is Wallace Kirshner, says, hey, what about video games or TV games, as they were kind of referred to back then? And that's where, that's kind of where this begins, right? From there, at that point, it's the late 70s. I think what they do is they go and develop it's 1974 Alpex Computer Corporation employs Wallace Kirshner and Lawrence Haskell, and they develop a home video game prototype consisting of a base unit centered on an Intel 8080 microprocessor. Chuck, you were right about that, the 8080. And interchangeable circuit boards containing ROM chips that could be plugged into the base unit. The duo attempted to interest several television manufacturers in the system, but were unsuccessful. Here's where everything changes. Next, they contacted a buyer at Fairchild, which sent engineer Jerry Lawson to evaluate the system. Dude, our boy Jerry Lawson, man, he was the one that really was like, hey, let's do this thing. Oh, I got excited. Let me take a deep breath. Whew. Okay, so Fairchild sends over Jerry Lawson because you're right. You're right, Chuck. They had the Intel 8080 when they developed the prototype.
Right.
Because I think I remember these guys. They went down to Radio Shack because really what they discover here is like, hey, we can design games and put them into these freaking chips, and then, like you said, we can offer a unique product to these kids, these consumers, these what would you call them? They weren't gamers yet, but let's just call them gamers for I don't know if the word gamer even really anyone had coined that. Arcader, maybe, because there were arcades. I don't know. That's a different topic. So, like, let's offer this unique product to gamers because, no one else can do it, where you can have one singular system and introduce different games onto it because the game is on the extendable device, not in the console. And then they needed to, they remember seeing the Magnavox, I think, and they said, hey, we need to build something here that consumers aren't going to be able to break. Mm-hmm. Their lack of understanding of the sensitive tech and wiring and soldering and chips and all that, they're not aware of how sensitive these things are. How can we give them something that's more durable? And they go to Radio Shack, and I think they just bought some random shit. Sorry. Don't worry, Chuck. I'll cut all that out.
Fuck.
Chuck's looking at me like, didn't you just say at the beginning of the episode that we shouldn't be making...
Yeah, I can't swallow, but...
I know what I can cut out.
Go ahead.
Anyways, they go into Radio Shack and they buy all this stuff, and they kind of just design. Here it is, the historical game changer. What made this whole device part of gaming history? They create the first fucking cartridge.
Yeah, this puts it on the map, and this is why we're talking about it more than say some Pong system or something that doesn't really constitute an episode. I think you have one of the a minority one of the first minority engineers here that plays a pivotal role in this and sounds like an awesome dude like throughout his entire life and I think maybe he had been exposed to computer space like one of the very first video games and so kind of been working on some stuff like this in his garage and
he
but
sold
also
a video game.
Fairchild, and they sent him over to check this stuff out. And that the Alpex guys had going on, and they were like, hell yeah, we can do this. But yeah, like you say, the cartridge, it sounds like the chip, like the first Intel chip, made it possible to kind of have this ROM situation, like where you have a programmable cartridge. And then they took the inspiration from your 8-track tapes, which I distinctly remember. My mom had a car. She had a Lincoln Continental that had an 8-track tape player, and
so cool,
it's
dude.
very similar to this. Like, it didn't protect the end like they did, and I think it's interesting. Like, if you look at their drawing, it one of the first things I noticed is it had that ZIF, which later, like we kind of gave credit for, I think the Nintendo system having and it's this zero insertion force situation, like where, I think like you'd mentioned there with the Odyssey, people had pretty much had like that data card, like we were talking about the data from Star Trek looking thing, where that they could damage. It looked like it pretty much like. Was
break that thing and
it was just sticking out.
Sit
there,
on it
so.
and freaking Well, it was just a big chip.
Yeah, so they invented that little clever system. Like I think they headed over to your local Radio Shack and found some, boxy something that was probably some kind of something to house some sort of electrical conduit, and jammed their little ROM chip up in there, and
they just jammed it up in there.
yeah, and they put the ribbed. Like little part to pull it out on the top part there. Made a little.
Are you doing that on purpose, or are you actually being serious?
It's the truth, man. They did. Like it's right there. You can grab a hold. Look at them little carts, and I think they stuck with their thought of this is a television channel, and that's why they numbered their cartridges. Like you got cartridge 1 through I think 26 or 7, something like that, and then there's been a few like made after the fact video games, like more modern, like user made type things. But yeah, they and I want to say the first Ataris actually numbered their cartridges when it very first came out, and they kind of backed away from that. I think as time went on, realized like the branding and like how we all get excited about boxes and cartridges and like people collect these things. Like they should look a certain way. Oh Lord, I've messed up my mic again.
No, you're good. Don't touch it. Just make sure that you're still recording so we don't go through that last struggle.
Jesus. All right, I think we're good. We are still recording.
Okay. All right. Let me finish this thing here. This history. Okay, so Fairchild sent over Jerry Lawson, which
True.
Was a game changer and pivotal to this whole to gaming history through the Fairchild console. He was impressed by the system and suggested that to Fairchild to license the technology, which the company did in January 1976. Okay, so what does that mean? That means Alpex is in. They have now a partnership with Fairchild that can, I believe, is it Fairchild themselves that take on the manufacturing? I believe it is. They do and they also have the microprocessor, which is a huge part. Jerry Lawson worked with industrial designer Nick Talesfore and mechanical engineer Ron Smith to turn the prototype into a viable project. Lawson replaced the 8080 Intel microprocessor with Fairchild's own F8 CPU, which is the CPU processor that I mentioned earlier that like you could buy as a dev kit and just work on. So while Nick Telsfor and Ron Smith were responsible for adapting the prototype's complex keyboard controls into a single control stick and encasing the ROM circuit boards into plastic cartridges reminiscent of 8-track tapes. There you go. So they replaced the 8080 with the Fairchild's F8 CPU, and Telsfor and Smith adapted the complex keyboard controls into a single stick, which is the controller we were discussing, and they put the ROM circuit boards into plastic cartridges, which again, they kind of like began via that Radio Shack shopping spree.
Yeah.
That's where they got they were inspired by the 8-track, but they got the stuff that the initial prototype for the cartridge, they got it at Radio Shack. That's for sure.
I feel like that's every trip to Radio Shack too. Did you ever go to Radio Shack like for something? It's always like they never have exactly what you need, but there's something you can make work. You know?
Yes. Is there still Radio Shack in the States?
I don't think so. I want to say they went under.
I think there is here.
Like more recent than you would imagine. Like it went way up in. I would say in our town there was one up into the 90s, probably 2000 or something.
That was a long time ago, Chuck. Can you believe that?
Well, and what was cool about ours is like one of the side things that the owner did just of his own volition was sell used video games and playing cards, or not playing cards, trading cards, like baseball cards and that kind of thing. So you could go trade baseball cards for video games or vice versa. But I felt like I could just totally relate with them going to Radio Shack to do this, knowing they're not going to have exactly what they need, but also like there will be something that will work,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Man. So, okay, we've talked about the background. I mean, that's really it, right? So like they go and design the first prototype. They get the deal with Fairchild. And when was there was a CES. Remember the CES shows that we talked about?
The Consumer Electronics shows?
Yeah, that's it. Reception. Let's see. Well, yeah, if I remember correctly, they had a presentation to announce the Fairchild console. Or the video entertainment system, and they announced it at a winter CES. I don't remember where it was, but it was at the what is it called, Chuck?
Consumer Electronics Show.
That's it. Thank you. I always forget the name of that. They announced it, and I believe, and it was insane. Like very high interest. I believe one of the people that was at the show there said that their booth was just packed with people consistently, and a lot of the other companies, I'm just gonna say names. I'm not sure if they were there or not, but Atari and Television, all these other people that were there, were kind of seeing what these guys were like. Hey, we've got these things now. There's cartridges. Each cartridge holds this many games, so that you're not limited to one game in your console, yet multiple games. And even if you can't get the cartridge, we have 2 games on the console already. So no matter what, you're getting at least 2 games on your. It's like they were so popular. There was so much heat and attention on this Fairchild console. So, and they had it was effectively we'll call it the initial model, kind of like a prototype at that show, because it hadn't yet been approved for commercial use. And it was at that time that a couple of months later, they were getting prepared for their final, the release for the December sales or something like that, the winter sales. And I don't know the exact name of the governmental department, but I think it's the FCC.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I know where you're going with this. Yeah. It's something like this.
Is it the FCC, Chuck? Let's see here. Yeah, Federal Communications Commission. So basically, there's this rule, this federal rule that you have to get if you're building electronic devices, that you have to submit it for testing so that they can test it for basically radio transmissions and electronic transmissions that emanate from any device that's commercially produced, to assure that the emissions that it produces are low enough to not interfere with what could be radio telecommunications, police broadcasts, police, like all this stuff. You can check it out. That's kind of my general understanding, is that it has to produce a very small amount of radiation emissions, or or any of that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So basically,
I agree with you that it must be it. But when I first read that, I was thinking like radiation, like nuclear radiation, like parting Valboy's hair or something.
Why would the FCC care about that? That'd be more of a health thing, not a communications thing, right?
True. Yeah, I like I said, I agree with you, especially with under their context like that. But it also seems crazy that could a single console like
back then? Hell yeah, dude. Fuck, man, everything was so basic and rudimentary back then. It was all turn dial, fucking. I mean, it was so. I mean, my grandpa Wayne used to tune in on all that shit, dude. People still do.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a little kid, dude, and you fucking turn on fucking tennis, and you start hearing a broadcast of some crazy shit, some cult leader out in the desert of California, and you're just a little kid there, and in Corona or something. Fuck. No, yeah, FCC's got to check that shit, dude.
I see. Yeah, I was thinking more like just like a good little blast of radiation or something. Shit, I don't know. I mean, it's like a magic box as far as I'm concerned. I'm not an electronic genius.
Yeah, no, that'd be more of a health.
But I did see videos of people testing the old ones, and it's like the screen was all fuzzy, and if his buddy held the controller wires in his hands, it fixed it somehow or whatever.
I saw that too.
And I also remember I had a buddy that I played video games with growing up, and he lived next to our local radio station, and we would turn on the TV sometimes, and the radio station would be coming through the TV.
That's exactly what I'm getting at, dude. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I guess that's it. I would picture that going in the other direction. The radio station had a 100-foot tower and a freaking two massive generators going or whatever. It just seems.
And I'm sure that those towers and generators also have rules that they have to comply with.
Yeah, it was annoying as hell to us as kids. We were just what the fuck.
But I think the bottom line here is for Fairchild and for Alpex is that they had things in motion, dude, and they were on crunch. They needed to make money. They didn't start off good. This whole endeavor was to get them out of the hole, right? When we started talking about the background here, is they were in deep doo-doo.
It sounded like they tried to shorten the I guess those controllers must have been two big ass antennas sticking up in the air, making that situation
you didn't let me
worse.
get to that part yet. They failed the test. I didn't. We didn't get to that. They submitted the product for testing with the FCC, and then they got and the government doesn't respond fast. They don't respond in 24 to 48. It takes time. And they're on the punch. They need to start manufacturing and selling stat. And then they get the bad news. And then it just sends everyone into frickin', in a clusterfuck insanity, and they basically they start looking for solutions, and they finally come to one. Oh, and by the way, we forgot to mention this. It was originally going to be sold for $100. And they had to increase, because of the changes they had to make, they had to increase that price over time to I think it was $150 or $120 or something like that. And then when they had this whole FCC debacle and they had to find a solution after several weeks, possibly months, I don't remember exactly, but they did find a solution, and that was to, inside that plastic layer, there was this metal case, basically a metal shield that would just encase the whole thing. And they had to put that in, and that was the solution that allowed them to pass the FCC testing. However, including a metal shield in every single unit means an expense, means more money. So they had to increase the price again, which also probably didn't help them at the end of the day when it came to sales, because as we indicated, that was a lot of fucking money back then.
That seems
that's
like
a lot of money for your household.
For a piece of steel.
Well, yeah, but that's a piece of steel back in the 70s, man. You know what I mean? Like these, like
it would be cheaper in the 70s, maybe. I don't know. Like,
no, I don't think so. But it doesn't. That's the point. Is huge hurdle, huge unexpected curveball. But you know, as we've learned, Chuck, man, it seems like if you were getting into the video game industry back in the 70s, 80s, it was all curveballs. It was all, you didn't know what was going to happen, man. You didn't know what team you were on, the winning team, the losing team. It seems like if you were in video games, it's almost a certain losing team back in those times, because it was just everyone was trying to figure this shit out.
I think too, though, like it seems like right from the jump, like electronics quickly became obsolete, just like they do now. Like, you know, I felt like we got that news recently that the PlayStation's already at like halfway through its life, and like I just now got mine, and like could purchase one.
We just got this damn thing.
But like little do these people know, you know, once they get this, you know, radio station in a box, like next year they're putting out the version 2 that, you know, doesn't have the wood grain and all, like it's got some improvements coming, you know, and you gonna want that? Kids gonna want that? There's another $900 for right now. Man.
So, Chuck, what did it look like? The actual console, like if for anyone listening right now that's, you know, driving or doing chores or something like that, and they can't just pull it up real quick. Which, if you can't, check it out. It's, if you're into like old retro tech and like, you know, 80s and 70s, 80s type stuff, man, this is right up your alley. But it's also been, you know, featured in a lot of movies and old series and stuff like that. You can spot the Fairchild in some of those. I think I saw it in one of the old Back to the Future movies, perhaps.
Dude,
But
like
anyways, Chuck, what does it look like?
Get those controllers, like it's like I can easily describe the console, but I couldn't describe that controller without a whiteboard or something. Like, but it looks like you took like that era's like cassette. I used to have a cassette recorder that had the buttons on the front, and then right behind the buttons, a little thing lifted up, and a cassette slid down in there, and there was a speaker. It seems like you got one of those kind of sitting beside I don't know, the bottom of a cash register or something there, and they're all just kind of married together. I mean, it looks fairly like technological, but it also has the wood grain, like to go with your floor model TV.
I love wood grain. I love fake wood grain even more.
I'm gonna say like I kind of do like, and I understand why they went with this choice, like for it to, you know, kind of match up, you know, the like your mom being more okay with it being in the living room or whatever. But when I look at the new one that once they sold out to Zircon and they make the 2 or whatever, I'd rather have the 2, because the controllers come off and there's like a ton of like just other things. But yeah, basically, you know, it's somewhat technologically advanced looking, but then it's also somewhat analog looking. Like those buttons are kind of.
What else do we got? Do you have bring up a picture of it if you have to, man? I don't know if you got a picture up right now. If you're going off memory, but
yeah, I'm just basically going off memory. But yeah, those are like my impressions of it. Like I like that little home for the controllers up there, like I said, and you know, it's got that little plastic top that goes over that. Like you could get those cords rolled up nice and put them in there and put that down, which I would probably never do, but it would be there.
All right, let me pull up a picture here. There's wood grain on the sides, and it's got these angular cuts, kind of like 40, maybe 45, not even 45, maybe like 30-degree angle cuts. It's really like it kind of looks like the shape of like a DeLorean, kind of like those with those weird angles. The top's totally black, and it says, is this the first one? This might even be the first one. And it has 5 buttons. This is what I wanted to describe a little bit more in depth. It's got these 5 buttons that are on the front next to the cartridge slot that Chuck was describing. And it basically has 1 yellow button, and then it has 4 buttons that say 1, 2, 3, and 4. The yellow button is a reset button, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And then there's the numbered 4 buttons, 1 through 4. Above the 4 buttons, there's like there's multiple lines of information, and then under the 4 buttons, there's one other line of information. So they serve different purposes depending on what you're doing. But let's say you don't have any of the cartridges that were being sold, and you just have the base console. Buttons 1 and 2 would take you to either hockey or the tennis game, which were pretty much the same thing. The only difference was kind of like the hockey game. The hockey players' little the line that you would use to shoot the ball back would spin. You could spin the hockey, the cursor thing. You remember that?
Uh-huh.
And on the tennis one, it was basically just Pong, but with like a tennis court type of thing. So that was cool. And then you could also use these buttons to set the time in each match. And I think they serve some other functions, but that was pretty much it. And then to the right of those buttons is the cartridge port and a huge press to eject button, which I love. It looks so old school. It's funny. My favorite part about the design of this console, though, is definitely the angular cut and the wood grain on the side and the front. It's so old school. I love it.
It kind of looks like some of the clock radios from those days.
It does, indeed.
Like a moderner one.
It does. Like a clock radio, but just with the angular cut. Because you see how the sides are kind of on an angle, Chuck? They're not square. It's really cool. I love that. And I think that's okay, that was the original. This is the Channel F. Okay, now I'm looking at the Channel F, which is actually, I should have pulled this one up first, I suppose. But, oh no, that's the System 2. Fuck, there's so many, Chuck. Okay. Man, you guys, fellow gamers, check out pictures of these old things. The System 2 looks pretty cool, actually. Were you looking at the first one, Chuck, or the System 2?
On the Wikipedia page, they've got them all kind of right here together, so I'm looking at them.
Yeah, but the System 2, it says right there on the top, it's a little bit different, too. It has the System 2 actually. Huh?
I like it better.
You do?
Yeah.
The System 2 has the slots where you can put the controllers, like you were saying.
I feel like if I take myself back to 76, or I guess, what is it, 78 or 9 by the time this second one comes out, like, to me that would look more modern. Like I would feel like better about dropping that $900 because I just took, stepped into the future. But, yeah, man. What else? What are we missing? I mean, it's funny because the Fairchild Channel F console or just Fairchild in itself is certainly not a household name, but its significance in gaming history cannot be overstated. Just with the cartridge thing, like I don't know if are there any consoles or gaming devices that still use cartridges that you're aware of, like that are like new, recent? I can't think of anything. I think that like the PlayStation 5 will still take, like, if you got that version of it, which I think is the one I got, like you can still put a CD, but yeah, as far as a cartridge.
Yeah, like I was thinking like, oh, my Switch, but that's just a chip. It's like almost like we've gone even further back than the cartridge. Like we came, the Switch has like gone back in time in a way almost. You know what I mean? Back to the Magnavox Odyssey days where you just put a chip in. It's funny.
Well, speaking of cartridges though, what about those games, man? Did you have like sort of a favorite game that you ran into, like far as the cartridges that are available?
I'm glad you brought that up, because we should mention that during the lifespan of the Channel F, including when it was sold and licensed to Europe and other countries for them to produce their own versions of it, even with all of that, only 26 games ever came out for the Fairchild Channel F. Be it known, only 26 games ever came out, and I think there were, the original 2 that were built in, and then they had 4 cartridges were originally slotted to come out, the first 4. Did I have any like ones that caught my eye? One of them did. I'm trying to remember the name. because towards the end of the lifespan, you know, kind of like we saw with Intellivision and kind of like we saw with Atari, the games did get a lot better towards the end. You know, like they really did. But I don't want to go looking on Google and finding which one looks the coolest and then say that one was the one that caught my attention, because that would be just, I'd be fibbing to you, Chuck. But no, not really, man. I mean, look, fellow gamers, the bottom line here is while these consoles and everything have like really like carved their place into history, you know, it's hard to look at the, you know, they look like shit. That's just the bottom line. They're little, you know, it's a bitmap. You can only get so much. Now that's not to say that they're not fun, engaging, competitive, you know, all of those things. It is to say though that when it comes to graphics and looks, you know, I don't need to use my imagination to try and describe it to you. It's a bit game. It's blocky and squarey, you know? There are no graphics. There are, but there aren't. You know what I mean?
Like some of the best graphics I saw were in that Spitfire game where the planes are flying. It seems like it would get old really fast, but I felt like, wow, those pretty well stand out. And you know, I want to point out that I used to play tic-tac-toe with my grandma, and like it pretty much always ends, and unless you let someone win, like it always ends in a draw. Like you know, most of the tic-tac-toe games that like we think of like are like game shows where you have to do something to get to go, like to get to place like if there's no one stopping you from blocking, like you got it's pretty hard to lose one. I have to say, like
once you learn the technique, you could literally never lose unless you let someone else win.
Yeah, that's.
And the technique is, if anyone's out there listening that hasn't learned this yet, you'll usually learn this pretty young. But if you want to always win or at least never lose tic-tac-toe, just always start at the edges, not the edges like the corner edges, the outside corner edges. Always start there. That's the secret. And then as long as you're paying attention to what the other person's moves is, you'll either win or you'll never lose. You'll always tie. Just start on the four extremes and you're good to go. What was I going to say?
Dude, I'm going to tell you where you could lose is if you asked for a video game and someone brought home cartridge 6 or 7, the math quiz. You got addition and subtraction, or wait for it, multiplication and division.
Yeah, but what if they came back with that blackjack game? That was one of their more popular ones, was that blackjack game.
I could see that because it's kind of already established as like a game, you know, that is interesting. I tried to ask myself, if I was going to a desert island and I could only take one of these games, like which one would I take? And if I got the aftermarket ones, I'd take the Tetris for sure. Like the ones that kind of came out later or whatever. But as far as the games that go with this, you'd almost have to take something like blackjack or something for it to continue to be playable even in the future. I think a lot of people say like the Alien Invasion, sort of the one of the last ones that came out, where when people were getting really good at programming this thing, and it looks like a pretty bona fide, you know, version of what is that game? Space Invaders.
Yeah. Oh, there were a lot of like basically like clones. You know what I mean? To these games. Let me find a video game console library. Here we go. Oh, look at these. Video Blackjack, Desert Fox. Oh, dude, Desert Fox. That's right. Desert Fox looked pretty sick. Desert Fox looked sick, dude.
I forget like what there's a tank battle game on the Atari that it's kind of like, and yeah, it seems like it would be viable. Like you could, I think you always had to play 2 players, and yeah, if you had a buddy to play that with.
Yeah, baseball is on here. Gosh, yeah, they did release a lot of, and they're all numbered, you know, number 17, number 18. Oh, wait, there is no 18. 17, 16. It looks like they're numbered up to 16. And then you got the Hangman, checkers, video whizball, bowling. Ooh.
Yeah, I think they're numbered all the way up to
Galactic Space Wars. Oh, Galactic Space Wars looks dope. Oh, you're right. They are numbered. The numbers are just smaller on these later ones.
Galactic Space Wars was kind of like Asteroids.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yep. Hangman. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, these... And there's the Casino Poker, Alien Invasion. Is that a soccer game? Pro football or soccer? Yeah, so cool stuff. That's all 26 of them here listed.
Did you run across like something about like sort of a game show that they used the Fairchild on called TV Pow? And like this, I feel like for my generation will unlock for a lot of people. I when I first I was sitting there watching and I heard someone announce that like, oh, this was used on TV Pow, and then all of a sudden I heard a kid going, pow, 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 and I was like, oh shit, I remember that, like, because they had this thing like where they used the Fairchild Channel F, and you could phone in to this game show and it would bring up one of these games, and I think it was the Robot War one, and you basically, they had someone there controlling it, and you over the phone told them when to shoot, and you kind of played the game on there like as a prize, and the lag was terrible, like by the time the kid could see it or whatever, like it was just like, you know, the worst situation ever, and it kind of evolved and got better. Like somehow they fixed the lag, and I think it even ended up like with Regis Feldman kind of doing a version of it. Probably is where I saw it. Like, but yeah, that like you talk about a nightmare. Like the only thing worse than playing one of these games would be try to play it over the phone. Like
yeah, back then it's like, hurry up, son! This is a long distance phone call.
Pow.
$5.99 a minute.
I think the person controlling it eventually just took mercy on the kid and would like just try to aim themselves, like, and just yeah, you win, like, yeah, kind of thing. But yeah, it was interesting. But
well, we need to wrap this one up. Chuck T, do you got any final comments? I
feel like, you know, one of the things that gets brought up is like this Atari rivalry, like sort of like and you know, they talk about like things that, you know, like we talked earlier about the name, and you know how it influenced them to change their name because of what Atari was doing. But how the fuck can you tell me that Atari was inspired by them when you look at how could you look at the controller on the Fairchild Channel F for inspiration and then go with what Atari went with? Like,
I don't understand what you mean.
The joystick has one stick and one button. Like you can literally move left, right, up, and down and push one red button. And the Fairchild on the Atari, but the Fairchild Channel F, like I said, you can control, like, you know, the lights in the White House with it also inside of your video game. Like it just kind of blows my mind that was out there. And you know, like I say, you can see these other places where they obviously got inspiration from it, and they went with that controller instead. Like it just seemed,
is that a compliment to Fairchild, or what are you trying to say? I don't understand.
It blows my mind that, like, obviously that Atari looked at these things and they I mean, it's not so much a compliment as it just, you know, that controller is what it is. I feel like it was probably overkill, but it does amaze me how, like, the joystick that was going to be used by the most popular thing that you know, ultimately killed this thing, like, because it was more popular and everyone went with it instead. Like, the controller is, like, just super rudimentary in comparison.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, you know, I think Atari had a lot going for them. You know, they had what was his name? Bushnell?
Yeah, I forget exactly,
you know what I mean?
All
like,
the characters involved in that, but it just blows
it's been a
my
while
mind.
It's been a while since we've talked about Atari, but we did the episode on the Atari 20, what was it, the 2600?
I forget exactly, but like I say, it just
Killing me, Chuck.
It
Let me go
blows.
back and look at it. Let me see here. I want to... There it is. Man, we've got a lot of episodes up. Holy shit, though. Atari 20... Wow, that was episode 8. No wonder why we don't remember it that well. Atari 2600, Struggle, Triumph, and Legend. Go listen to it, fellow gamers. But I think Atari had a little bit more... I think they had a better understanding of what was a Wild West in gaming, you know, and like a crazy new world of gaming where anything could go and anything could work or anything could fail. I think Atari still had a little bit more experience than these guys at Fairchild that were coming out of bowling. You know what I mean? Like, because Atari, like, they had already been, like, if I remember correctly, kind of working in the video game world a little bit, you know, via... Did I lose you, Chuck? Oh, boy. I think I lost ChukTomahawk here. Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
Did I lose you for a second?
Yeah, it froze up for a sec.
That's okay. What I was saying was, I just feel like Atari was a little bit more experienced in those times, and I think that maybe perhaps they had a better understanding of the things that were just not necessary. You know, like because if like within television. And a lot of these consoles that were coming out back then that were, you know, first gen, second gen consoles, in my view, from what I've observed and kind of researched and seen, is that a lot of them had shit that didn't need and that never got used, and that ultimately resulted in huge expenses that never brought a return. You know what I mean? Like, I remember the Intellivision having stuff that just never got used. You know, they designed these things for it, and it just, you know. And I feel like Atari, like, so what I'm getting at with that is that maybe Atari knew that they didn't need to have such a complex controller, and that it would be enough with just, you know.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I mean, we could keep going on, but I think we've covered kind of like the main important points on this lovely historical device, which is the Fairchild Channel F. Granted, there is more, of course. They go on to create the System 2 and whatnot, but ultimately in 1983, it is discontinued, and now is just, you know, a beautiful piece of gaming, of retro gaming tech culture and video game history. You know, like we saw with a lot of the companies back then, some developers would leave and go on to create other companies, would go on to form part of other companies. You know, that all happened as well. But I mean, I guess my final comments would be that a comment of appreciation, because I certainly remember the beginning of my gaming days were all about cartridges. You know, my gaming days started with the NES, the Game Boy, the Super NES. Those were all the first systems I ever played. The Sega Game Gear, Sega Genesis, all of those were in my world when I started gaming, and they were all cartridge based until the PlayStation came out. Mm-hmm. So I am grateful to the Fairchild Channel F and what it did for gaming. I don't believe I don't believe we'll be ever going back to cartridges necessarily, especially with streaming and cloud gaming and whatnot. Nevertheless, for a great number of years, man, cartridges were everything, and they brought many of great games to our you know, gaming pleasure.
Yeah. I think it made the video game system viable, like and you know, worth the bang for the buck. Like it had like when you bought it, it wasn't the end of the road. Like, you know, in the future there were going to be games coming out, and you know, it looks like they made most of theirs in house, but you know, especially once you start seeing third parties being able to produce those, that's what makes it all like a viable business.
Quick quiz. Do you remember what the very first third-party developer was? Who the first third party developer was?
I guess that was Activision, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, hell yeah, Chuck. Yeah. So just like what we've saw with other systems we've covered in our prior episodes, a lot of these characters and figures that are so iconic in video gaming history went on to be, continued huge players in the video gaming world. Activision, Electronic Arts, id Software, and all these people we've talked about a little bit here and there. But anyways, man, so much more. But we try to keep these around an hour now. Some of our first episodes were like 3 hours long. I think we quickly realized nobody likes us that much yet.
Keep on.
But we're gonna keep keeping on. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate you tons. If you would be so kind, we would terribly love to have your support on the pod. It's challenging getting out there to new listeners, but if you enjoy, please. What's it called, Chuck? We could use your help. Honestly, is on your wherever you listen to podcasts. If you could share us. Follow or like, however you happen to do that. On Spotify, it's a follow. If you could give us a follow and a rating, we'd be super grateful. If you're on Apple Podcasts, I think you can even drop a review, even if it's a horrible review. Hey, as long as it's 5 stars, we'll shout you out on the podcast. Nice. That would be funny. Like, dear Chuck and Ovox, you guys suck, but here's 5 stars. That would be awesome. I would absolutely read every one of those out. Anyways, thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, man.